Hi everybody, and thank you for joining us on the webinar today. This one's all about growing your MSP sustainably with marketing. Here with me today is our copywriter Stevie.
Hello.
Stevie, do you want to give us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I've been working in marketing for a few years now. I'm the in-house copywriter and PR. A little bit about me. I did a journalism degree, so that has obviously helped me in my career through marketing into copywriting and PR. And yeah, looking forward to doing the webinar today.
And also with me is Chris, our CEO and head of marketing.
Yeah, so my background is I've been in all sorts of businesses, all shapes and sizes, worked in IT for pretty much 12 to 14 years now. It's been a long time. And marketing's always been a kind of passion of mine. And but I am not degree educated in it. So you've got one on me.
We're going to start off with our journey with marketing.
Obviously, we're going to be talking about marketing and how you can implement it in your MSP, coupled with the examples we've got from in-house and our results off the back of that. And hopefully you'll be able to implement some practices in your business.
So I'll pick this up. So our journey with marketing. So I mean, traditionally as a business, when we first started, we relied on traditional sales. So cold calling was a huge component of what we did initially. Social selling, so using things like LinkedIn. And we've kind of been doing that for a long time and had sort of very limited success, and kind of attribute a lot of that to the high churn that we get in sort of the high sort of natural churn in sales teams. And that over time compounds to cost the business a lot of time and money. Yeah, so during the course of COVID, we'd hired an experienced sales executive to come in and basically help us grow the business. But they started with us in the January, and by sort of February, March, it was quite clear that we had COVID. And actually, that was going to make a huge change to the business over the next few months. So I'd always wanted to go down the path of marketing. I think the mistake that a lot of businesses make is they sort of it's accepted that you'll hire a lot of salespeople and churn them, and at sort of a significant cost. And we could take that same application of resources and put into marketing and actually get stuff that lasts for the lifetime of the business. So we can produce an asset once and actually use that over and over. And actually, when you start to get into the costs, which we'll come on to, you can see that it actually does stack up to use marketing versus using sales. And I think as well that it's important to say it's not just one or the other. You have to have both, because it's important that when you generate leads through your marketing activity, that you've got the sales team there to make sure those leads are dealt with appropriately. And that's, it's sort of it's really that as a business owners, we accept the fact that we will spend and waste money on sales resources, but we can't, for some reason, accept the fact that we could just spend the same on campaigns and have, out of 10 campaigns, 4 might perform and 6 might not. But as business owners, it's acceptable to have salespeople that you churn, but not to spend money on marketing. And I think that's the change that we've made. Is we decided that actually it is acceptable to spend that money on marketing, and we've seen the return from doing that. One of the things that we've been working on is sort of, when we look at our client base, is customer lifetime value. So this is really important, because if you start to think about things like Google pay-per-click or LinkedIn ads, you can have a really, really high cost per click. You could be paying for what we call sort of bottom of funnel. So top of funnel is people that perhaps don't really know about your product or service, but might be eventually in the market to buy. Middle of funnel is they've sort of got an idea of the product or service, but still don't have significant intent to buy. And then bottom of funnel is these are the people that are ready to buy, are ready to carry out an action, whether that's inquiring with you, getting a quotation, or signing up to be a partner. And what's really important here is the actual lifetime value, because that dictates how much we can afford to spend on actually acquiring a client. And the great thing about the MSP market is customers tend to pay quite a reasonable amount and tend to stay for a long period of time. So customer lifetime value, that's how much a customer's worth, sometimes well in excess of the contracted spend. So you might sign a customer up to a 3-year commitment, but actually that customer might on average stay for between 5 and 7 years. And that's really important, because the perception of the marketing spend sort of really shifts. So for example, like if you have a customer that spends £3,200 a month with you and typically stays for say 5 years, which is probably a little bit on the short side versus the real world, that customer lifetime value would be £192,000. And then really the question you have to ask yourself is, what are you willing to spend to actually attract that customer? And the great thing about such a high lifetime value is if we said it was 10%, which is not unreasonable, you could spend £19,200 attracting that account. And it might be that, for example, in the MSP space, IT support services Manchester might be £15 a click, and you might need 200 clicks to attract a customer. That's only £3,000. So very quickly you can see that actually on the paid side, and obviously there's much more to revenue generation through marketing than just paid spend, but that gives you an idea of what you can do with that budget. So we start to get into the commercials of sort of the two compared with one another. If we think about the traditional costs of sales, if we were to hire 3 sales resources on, say, £35,000 a year, and then we as a business have got sort of the employer's NI component, which is taken into 38,600. Our day one cost for recruiting them based on a sort of a 16% recruitment fee is going to be in the region of about £17,000. And then we sort of take the 12-month salary plus the recruitment fee. And the thing here is this is probably a little bit under, because I think the sort of average lifespan of someone in sales is going to be around 6 months. And actually, if you choose to replace them at the 6-month point, you're going to have the recruitment fee again. But if we just take this for the argument of this sort of demonstration, that total cost there is going to be £132,000 over the course of a year for that sales function. And that excludes giving that team any leads to work on. And of course, the problem in sales is, as any business owner will know, is that when those people, are let go for non-performance or leave the business, it tends to be the things that are in the pipeline don't pan out. It's very rare that they do actually pan out. So a lot of those efforts are lost because sales is all about relationships. And if you remove that person, those relationships can be permanently damaged. But that mantra seems to have sort of been acceptable to business owners, whereas marketing just isn't. And that's when you sort of demonstrate the costs like this, what you'll see is that actually it really shifts. So if we sort of look at the same model, but now change our approach and have one person in sales, because we need, as a marketing team, we need someone that's going to process those opportunities and make sure the customers get the right amount of attention they need. And also something that we focus on is a phrase called speed to lead. So it's, if someone inquires with you and you respond back to them, I think the stat's something like, if you respond within 20 minutes, there's about a 3 times higher likelihood of them actually qualifying as a prospect with you. It makes a massive amount of difference, because often, we're creatures of habit. We'll open 3 browser tabs, we'll get a quote from 3 suppliers, and often the first person that meets your requirements, it's just, human nature. If you build a good relationship with them, that you're more likely to place business with them. So if we then hire one person in marketing, it kind of gives us again, on the same basis as the previous, that gives us a total 12-month cost of sort of 77,920 on exactly the same calculations. That's going to give us one person in marketing to manage all the campaigns and activity, perhaps do a small amount of PR, help us within the website, help us manage the CRM. That's going to give us a 12-month cost of just under £80,000, leaving us around sort of £54,000 to actually use for campaigns. So that £54,000 will go a long way. If we just purely spend that on paid media, you could arguably spend, £4,500 a month. And at a cost per click of what could be £15 to £25, you can quickly see that actually you can generate a lot of clicks. Now, obviously, conversion rate is a huge factor there. That's not to say that if you spend that money, it will always convert. There are other things you will have to do, like brand. But actually, you can quickly see that it does start to stack up. I mean, there's some of the stats there that we've got, and this is based on one of our real-world pay-per-click campaigns. We're getting quite good quality leads, between £400 and £200 a lead, depending on the sort of quality. it does tend to be that the more you spend does tend to equal, because it's really about refinement. The more you spend, the more you can refine. Therefore, you are going to pay much more because you're getting a much better qualified inquiry. So yeah, I mean, if your budget went purely on pay-per-click in this model, and your average lead cost was £300, in theory, you could generate 3 leads a week off that £54,000 budget. And if your win rate is, like basically out of 12 leads, what would your win rate be? And could you close 3 customers a month? And I'd like to think that probably most people could close at least 3 of those inquiries. And if your average customer value is £1,500 or £2,000 a month, you can see that that's potentially £6,000 a month, the revenue that you can do off those inquiries. And very quickly, marketing begins to pay for itself because that recurring revenue just begins to snowball. And what's great is everything that you build in the first year is only going to go on to sort of fuel the second year from a brand and marketing perspective. All those assets can just be reused. It's not like when a salesperson leaves the business, you just got assets on hand that you can use over and over to support all the activities that you're doing. So, I mean, this is a sort of visual representation here of the allocation of the funds. And you can see here that, yes, we will run a slightly lower salary cost in terms of the overheads for people. We've still got the recruitment fees to recover, but actually it's going to leave us a significant budget available for campaigns. And actually we don't, in this scenario, because we're generating leads for that salesperson, we perhaps don't need to spend as much on an enterprise salesperson. We can hire someone who is perhaps a little bit more junior but more attentive to the inbound inquiries, because they do need handling a certain way, and it's understanding what part of the journey that prospective customer is on when they arrive with you. So I'll hand over to Stevie to talk about the strategy in terms of like where you need to start as a business.
It was important when we all started here at Synextra that strategy was key to making the marketing team and the marketing function a success. I'm sure you would agree
definitely
with that. So there's a stat on the screen that says that companies are 313% more likely to be successful if they have a strategy in place. And what we want to talk about today is the steps that you can take to start to build that strategy, and looking at some real examples that we've done in-house, how they've performed, and a bit of a brief insight of what we've learned from those. So if you just see on the slide there, a few things that we've highlighted is establishing your business goals. So you can then build your marketing goals off the back of them. I'm sure lots of people are familiar with thinking SMART. That's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So when you're determining those goals, ensuring that all those things are applied to them, so they are clear and you can actually achieve them. The next step is to really know your market. So looking at the size of the market, the growth, any trends that you can implement into your strategy. Yeah. One thing to really focus on in your strategy is a customer profile.
Yeah, and I think this is actually really important, because we've built a number of different I think we've got is it 3 or 4 we've got of ideal
We've
customers?
got 3.
3. So we identified very early on what our target customers are, and that allows us to be more specific because we know where those customers live. Because if your customer, for example, never uses LinkedIn to find you, you don't want to be on there because it's not going to generate a return, because your ideal customer profile is not there. And this customer profile, they're often referred to as ICPs, ideal customer profiles. And that's things like, what do they read? What websites do they visit? What are they interested in? What drives them? What motivates them? What's their typical demographic in terms of where they live, what technology they might be interested in, what's even down to what sports they might be interested in, because that's anything you can glean about your ideal customer profile is really going to help you be more targeted and get more for your money.
Yeah, I think just off the back of that, especially with B2B marketing, is looking at that person, that profile within a business, and looking at, we do sweet spots and we do pain points. So looking at those pain points and how you can resolve the problems and the challenges that your particular customer would would see in their business, and adapting your strategy and your content, which we'll move on to a little bit later, to really appeal to them. So once you've established your customer profile, it's then really important to look at your competitors, see what they're doing, see how well they're doing it, and implement that into your strategy. If there's something that's particularly successful with the people in your audience, replicate it, but do it in your own way with your own messaging. And then once you've established all that information, you can then create an action plan. Think about the marketing mix, think about the tactics that you're going to put in place, what channels you're going to go on, what content you're going to produce, and then you're well on your way.
One thing I would say on the competitors is, whilst it's important to look at what they do, you've really got to try and stand out. And obviously the competitors that you're against might have significant budgets, and it can't just always be about spending more. And actually, you need to be smart and be creative, and that will help your money go a lot further with your campaigns.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting what you say about standing out from your competitors. Like you say, some people will have budgets that are huge, and if you're a startup and you're only starting thinking about your marketing strategy, your budget's not going to be massive. Yeah. So we've got some examples here of stuff that we've done in-house where we haven't spent a huge amount of money, but we've really seen a return on.
Yeah. So the one area that's worked really well for us actually is, we're still sort of on this journey. We're probably about 2 or 3 months into this actual process. And so far, one of our best performing areas is actually our LinkedIn campaigns. So this for us is how we acquire new partners. And our LinkedIn sort of current ad spend, we're achieving about between £200 and £350 per bottom of funnel, quite high intent lead through LinkedIn. And we've got here on the screen some examples of the types of ads that we're running. We've tried, we really do a lot of what we call A/B testing. So this is, we try 2 or 3 different combinations. We look at what works and we continually alter them and innovate. And the idea is that we're really trying to improve what's called the click-through rate. So the click-through rate is what percentage of people that see the ad actually click to expand the text or click to go to your website or fill in the form. So the higher, because really that ad is to get people's attention and to get the click. And different things work better than others. Like we find that like high contrast colors work quite well. The use of like lots of like similarly aligned large fonts that really convey the message well inside the actual ad. Because LinkedIn's one of the few ad platforms where there's no real limit on the amount of text you can have in an ad. Obviously, if it looks awful, it's probably unlikely to get people's attention, but you really need to use that space to get people to click through and engage with you. And then the great thing about LinkedIn is actually the lead gen forms. I think this is kind of a really good aspect is you can have a form that pre-fills the customer's details. So you're really like taking a lot of the friction out of that person actually submitting the lead. And that's like why we really like LinkedIn. It's so easy to get up and running with. It's still probably a little bit of an immature platform versus Google pay-per-click. But there's no other platform where you can target your specific customer profile. In fact, you can actually, if you have a list of accounts, you can build a matched audience and you can target specific accounts with specific ads. So it's really, really powerful. And we've actually been working on putting together like a follow-up video, so which we will send out after this, you'll be able to go and download, which is how you can enable something called remarketing. So remarketing is kind of like low-hanging fruit. I think like it's a super low-cost way that you can get the attention of people that have been to your website but perhaps didn't get in touch with you, and you can stay in their mind, which is so important with the amount of social media and news and everything that everybody sees these days. You can really stay in front of your target prospect. And remarketing is basically when someone lands on your website, they get cookied, and that cookie stays in the browser and enables your ads to follow them around the internet, creating the perception you're everywhere, and they'll start to see your brand a lot more. And that is very, very low cost. You could be talking pence per click, because you have that first party data of you actually having that customer come to your website. And then you can use that to target them. It's a super low cost way of being very effective.
Yeah, I think we've all had remarketing in our normal life. Normally
Absolutely.
when you're shopping and you don't quite finish the purchase, and then it's everywhere you go. So I think it is it's effective, because eventually you will buy it.
I've still got a lot of gadget advertisements everywhere I go, or bike stuff. So yeah, this is, I think, like, people always said like content is king, and that's always been the mantra in marketing for a long time. But that is so true. Nothing really has changed in that respect. There's a lot of people fighting for attention, and you've really got to get your content right to get people to notice it. And it kind of is one of these things that it's, once you get up and running, it really can be like the sleeping giant. I mean, Stevie, do you want to talk us about like what content marketing is and how it can help improve marketing?
Yeah, so when we're looking at content marketing, it is true, content is king, and that term has been bandied about for a long time. However, especially within the last 18 months with COVID, the importance of content has really grown, in that, like, today you're all watching a webinar, more videos, because people were at home spending more time on their phone. They are looking at content, they're reading it, they're watching it. So it has become a lot more important for businesses to use the platform to really showcase their skills, their expert knowledge, especially in an industry like technology that we're in. It's really important that you use that content to get across how we are experts in our field, because it attracts customers, because people will come to us knowing that we have the answers. We'll be able to guide them on their way to the cloud. Any questions they have, they'll feel safe, and they'll put their trust in us as a supplier. A few slides back, we discussed with the marketing strategy, establishing the best channels for your marketing, and that still comes into play when it comes to content marketing. So if you're wanting to publish a blog post, for example, that will perform better on a channel such as LinkedIn, where people are seeking professional opinions, they want some like expert knowledge. That content is more likely to get across to your target audience, especially because you would have spent the time looking at the platform and understanding if your target audience is going to be on that platform.
For example, for an MSP, like if you think that your customers are interested in, like, it might be security, they might be concerned about phishing attacks, could you produce a piece of content that you can put out in front of your customers? And our focus is really like producing one great piece of content and using that as many times as possible. So that piece of content, can you incorporate it into the sales process? Can you use items of it if you get some stats to build infographics? Can you then use it doing an email campaign? Could you build a webinar around that? Could you talk to some local media outlets like the local newspaper or other local small business sort of magazines about, actually, I've written this great guide here or this great piece of content. Are you interested in sharing it with your readership? Because that's, you can then turn that one piece of content that, okay, it might have taken you a number of hours to put together, but you're really going to maximize that. And it's kind of building that library of assets that you can just use over and over again is so powerful. And something that we're sort of in the early stages of starting to explore is actually the use of PR. And this is something that Stevie's really been focusing on for us, and we're only just really getting started with this, but we believe this is going to be a significant component of what we do. And Stevie, can you talk us through sort of the aspects of PR?
Yeah, so PR, just there's a definition on screen that it's about your reputation, it's about what people say about you and what you're doing. So there's a model on screen there, the PESO model, which is the 4 different channels that you can use when it comes to media, and implementing those, it will really help towards boosting your PR and really getting a good message associated to your business.
So what would be a good example of like the types of PR that we're looking to do that might help inspire other businesses and what they're looking to achieve?
So, for example, the importance of earned media is particularly effective. So as Chris mentioned, getting the content out there, like press releases, getting them to publication and getting that put in front of your target audience is really important. It creates a better reputation for your business and has an overall positive impact.
So I think there's a misconception that PR is really difficult to do. And would you say that that's fair?
I think looking on the outside, it can be, and it can seem quite daunting. But just taking the small steps to really build up that presence and establishing a nice bank of contacts that you can distribute press releases to is a really effective way to get started.
And do you think like starting local with that is a good idea? Like maybe like local newspapers?
I'm a really big advocate for starting local, especially like, for example, with Synextra. It's really important that we build our local presence so we can then go further afield. So, submitting your press releases to local newspapers, local publications, as well as targeting the relevant industry publications, I think is a really good way to start.
And would you say that's just as easy as picking up the phone to somebody, or do you normally go on the website and get the details? Like, how would you go about researching those contacts?
So they're quite easily accessible. You can go on to, the publication's website. Newspapers will have all the edited details. However, don't be shy about picking up the phone. I think journalists will receive emails upon emails every day. If you can be that one company that give them a call and say, I sent you a press release, not sure if it's of any interest.
Yeah.
It might not get picked up, but they will think, oh, that was Synextra. They called us up to prompt us on something that they had sent to us. It's just whatever works for you. And, different newspapers, different publications will react to things differently.
Yeah.
It's just getting into your groove.
Yeah, and I suppose some of it's probably being timely as well. Like if there's topical news that's coming out, it's being there and having something ready to go. And I think another concept that I've heard is like the concept of like evergreen PR. You can write stuff that doesn't need a time of release, and then it's in the bank to just go whenever you're ready. And I think, that's probably going to be really useful for people watching, is that, you can just have these things written that aren't related to a specific point in time or a specific event, and then you can distribute that so that you're always thinking about PR.
Yeah, I think as well, with what you were saying there about the evergreen content, people might think that PR is purely reactive, but if you've got a bank of content that you can send to publications that fit in, is that you haven't done straight away, it's a really effective way to do that as well.
Yeah. So we'll go through now some of our sort of real world results that we've had. And we've got some stats here on some of the content that we've produced, and you can see that the blog posts tend to perform really well on LinkedIn. They really attract a much higher click-through rate. Amplification is really important on LinkedIn. Your staff need to be liking and commenting posts on the company page. That goes a long way towards making sure that more people see that content. And there's an employee advocacy feature of LinkedIn where you can promote that content out to your staff and actually encourage them to like and comment on those pieces. And then when we sort of come to the paid spend, you can see here there's some campaigns that we've put together, which you've sort of seen previously. And those campaigns are performing. What will happen with LinkedIn is when you first build a campaign, it will give you an idea of the expected click-through performance, which can often be sort of between 0.35 and 0.55% click-through rate. And really anything over that, anything over like 0.8 click-through rate is considered really, really good. And anything over 1% is excellent. It's like a really, really great piece of killer content. And you just really got to experiment is what I would say when it comes to channels like LinkedIn. Whilst this has worked for us, it might not work for you. And that's the thing, like it's, by sharing this, it's not like you could go and copy it and get exactly the same results, because it just doesn't work like that with marketing. You're going to need to build. We like to do like a lot of rapid fire testing. So we'll actually, when we come up with a campaign concept in LinkedIn, we'll build out 6 to 10 pieces of creative, different messaging, different CTA forms, and actually test to see what performs the best over a short period of time. And then, LinkedIn kind of does this naturally, but then we dial back the campaigns that don't perform, and the ones that are left are the best performing creative. And that has worked really, really well for us. And there's a lot of great YouTube videos. There's lots of great courses that you can do on websites like Udemy. So yeah, I definitely encourage if it's something you or your marketing team are interested in, yeah, definitely do the free courses or some of the sort of lower cost paid ones. That sort of concludes the webinar for today. It's only early in our journey to using marketing to grow Synextra, but I'm a huge advocate for the fact that it's really transformational, because we come from this world where actually it was tolerable to hire and fire salespeople in short periods of time and actually spend it's a lot of money to a business. And I believe fundamentally that marketing is going to be the future for what organizations in the B2B sector do, because often it's the best known companies that can be in front of their ideal customer that are likely to end up doing business with them. And if you're just not in front of them, they're just not going to know to come and work with you. And that's really what marketing powers for your organization. So if you have any questions, please enter them into the chat and we'll do our best to respond. We hope you really enjoyed today's webinar. We'd encourage you to follow on all of our social media channels. We've also just launched our new website and our podcast. If you head over to YouTube or your favorite podcast tool, the title is Experts in Polo Shirts. We cover all things tech, business, entrepreneurship, and we hope that you'd subscribe and hopefully give us a rating if you like it. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and have a great day.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.